Studying in medical school, let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Katie. I'm a fourth-year medical student about to finish up medical school and start residency in internal medicine in July. I've been getting a lot of questions asking for tips and tricks on studying in medical school. So I will just let you know that this is how I studied for first, second, third years. Step 1 and step 2 I can make a separate video on, but that studying is a little bit different than what I did during my preclinical and clinical years. I'll also start off with the disclaimer that this is just what worked for me. I don't guarantee that this will work for you. Maybe you take a few of the tips and tricks from this video and incorporate them into your studying, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I will also let you know the type of learner that I am. So I have a little bit of inattentive ADHD, so I have a really hard time studying for long periods of time. I'm also a very visual learner. For example, in undergrad, I used to hand write out my study guides and write on big whiteboards to try to memorize the information, and I'd also make little diagrams. Of course, I did try to do this in the start of medical school, realized very quickly that the volume of information was just a little bit too much to be able to keep up with that. I will also let you know that I studied a little bit of a different way for each year of medical school. My preclinical years were my first and second years, then we took step 1 and then we started our clinicals. At the end of each clinical, we would have a standardized NBME exam, and then I took step 2 at the end of my third year. All right, so I'll start off with Anki. So going into medical school, I had tried using Anki before to study for the MCAT. I really disliked Anki. I didn't think it was very user-friendly. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing, so I didn't end up using it for the MCAT. I quickly learned that the volume of information in medical school was going to be really difficult for me to retain. And it seemed like everybody was using Anki, so I kind of hopped on the bandwagon at that point. I am very glad I did. If you don't know what Anki is, it's a flashcard app that uses spaced repetition for memorization. So I would use pre-made decks that classes before me had made for our classes, because for first and second year, our exams were in-house exams, so they weren't standardized NBME exams. First thing I'm going to tell you is, even if Anki seems like it might not work for you, maybe just give it a try. Solely because the volume of information in medical school is insane, and unless you have like a super photographic memory, which I do not, it might be difficult to see information multiple times before the exam. Anki also causes you to actively recall the information to be able to like answer the flashcard, so I think that was really helpful in being able to memorize information too. Side note about Anki. When I used Anki, I would not just freely unsuspend all the cards and then start going through them, because there are so many cards that if you unsuspend all the cards at once, you may have like 1,500 new cards. That was really overwhelming to me. I did not like to see them all unsuspended at once. So I would go through and unsuspend as needed in small batches. So I'd do like a batch of 50. I would also go through each card and unsuspend one by one, because there might be information in there that I already know, and I don't want to waste my time doing flashcards on information that I already know. Truthfully, the settings and all that, I don't really remember because I haven't used it in a while. So I would recommend that you go and look for the correct settings. Anki has great information videos on how to use Anki and everything like that. During first and second year, I also used Sketchy. Sketchy is visual mnemonics. So as a visual learner, that really helped me. Of course, there were so many Sketchies. So I would unsuspend the Anki cards that went with a Sketchy, and that kind of helped me remember the information from that Sketchy. Occasionally, I would also draw out diagrams, whether that was on my iPad or maybe on a whiteboard or things like that. I would do this for information that I continually got wrong. I can insert a few examples of the types of diagrams and concept maps that I would make here. That is kind of first and second year. First year, I will say a lot of it is figuring out what works best for you. You're trying new study techniques, what feels like every day. You're realizing that what you did in undergrad isn't going to work in medical school. So first year was honestly the worst year for me in terms of studying, just trying to figure out like what was going to work. Also struggling with hearing everyone else around me. Sometimes it's best to just focus on yourself and try to see what's going to work for you. So for third year or clinical years, some schools have clinical years during second year. UWorld is going to be your best friend for clinical years. At the end of each clinical, you are taking a standardized NBME exam. So UWorld is very similar to those exams. So for example, for your internal medicine clerkship, you should be doing all the internal medicine UWorld questions, which I think comes out to like 1,100. It's a lot. Take the full number of questions, divide it by the number of days in your clerkship so you know how many UWorld questions to do a day. For those questions, I would unsuspend Anki cards that I got wrong, and that kind of helped me so that I was seeing the same information over and over throughout the clerkship. So here's another thing that's kind of step 2 related, but I'll touch on it here. When you unsuspend cards from one clerkship, should you continue to do those cards all throughout the year? So I had some classmates who did do that. I, however, got very overwhelmed with having so many cards to do. So for example, if you had internal medicine at the beginning of your third year, you're going to be carrying those cards all the way until you take step 2, which is another year. That's a lot. So I would just resuspend all of the cards and forget them all, or forget on Anki. And then I would go back and unsuspend when I was ready to study for step 2. Some helpful resources for third year clinicals are Emma Holiday, Divine Intervention, Online MedEd. So the next thing about studying for clerkships, taking NBME exams. I think you should take as many NBME exams as you can. Each clerkship has about 5 NBME exams, if I remember correctly. Take all 5 of them. No matter how much UWorld you do, NBME are the test writers. And if the test writers are giving you a practice exam, you need to know those practice exams inside and out. Now, going through the exam and just taking it and getting a score is not going to help you. The important part about taking those exams is reviewing those exams. That's going to be what makes your score go up. That's going to be how you continue to learn that information. Super important that you're reviewing those NBMEs and also reviewing your UWorld incorrects. Final tip for studying for clinicals, and this is also kind of a step 2 thing. If I realized I was getting multiple questions wrong about the same topic, over and over and over again. A lot of these exams are pattern recognition. If you're able to understand what they're asking for in terms of diagnosis in the question stem, there's only so many things that they can ask you about that diagnosis. Some examples are going to be, what is the next best step in management? What is the best diagnostic test? So what I would do is I would take a blank sheet of white paper. I would fold it in hamburger style and draw a line down the middle. I would pick a topic for that one sheet of paper. On one side, I would write questions, and then on the other side, I would write the answers. So I could kind of test myself going back and forth. On the side that had the questions, I would go through UWorld, I would go through NBME exams. I would find every possible question I could about that diagnosis. And now with ChatGPT, I'm sure you could kind of use ChatGPT to see what kinds of things they can ask on step 2 for that diagnosis. I would have every possible question that they could ask on the left-hand side. I found that to be really helpful. Eventually, it does get to be a lot to study, but that's kind of just part of it, unfortunately. I know this was kind of a rough overview of a bunch of different study techniques throughout the 4 years of medical school. I thought that this would be a good place for people to start, to kind of like save this video if you're going into medical school and you're kind of confused on even where to start, or if you're already in medical school and you just need some extra ideas on different ways to study. So I hope this helps somebody. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. If anyone's interested, I can make a video on step 1 and step 2 studying as well. But yeah, good luck to everyone out there.